Hi, this is Rachel from the Dotting Center. In today's tutorial, we're exploring paintbroidery. Now, don't go using that word. I think I might have just made it up. But basically, it's embroidery with paint. Now, follow me. If embroidery artists can claim to paint with thread, then us painters, we should be able to embroider with paint. Am I right? I don't know. Anywho, for this project, I'll show you how to use paint to create thick, plump, dimensional dot shapes to simulate the effect of satin stitches and French knots. We'll also use a round canvas, much like an embroidery hoop. I'm so excited to share this project with you, so let's go ahead and explore some paintbroidery. Now this is a big project, so it's split into 3 parts. This is part 1, where we cover the base coat and the first level of dots around the center flower. Part 2 is a fun one. We are going to use some of the bigger tools in the middle section of our flower painting, and we're going to focus on big design shapes. And completing out that middle section, we're going to get to right about here at the end of part 2. And then part 3, the finale. That is where we complete out the design and then go back in over the top to add some thickness and dimension and remove all the chalk lines at the end. And we'll do all of this to finish off this painting strong in part 3. For this project, you will need a 12-inch round canvas. This design will work on any shape canvas. It would look great on a hexagon shape, but we're using round today. You'll also need the 12-inch flower stencil, available only at the Dotting Center. You'll also need some dotting tools. This is my dream dotting tool set. And if you're unfamiliar with that, I'll leave a card up at the top. I have a whole video explaining why those are so super awesome. You'll also need a flat silicone tool. Now, that's the one that we're going to be using to make oval-shaped dots. And you can see mine has gotten some use. But it's a silicone flexible tip, and this makes perfect oval-shaped dots. You'll also need a set of stylus tools. These are absolutely indispensable for any dotting project. You'll need a compass, a chalk pencil, and a watercolor pencil, which you can find very inexpensively. These are great for marking canvases. And for the base coat, I did something fancy. And so you might want to use a foam brush, this kind of round stencil sponge brush, or just a regular paintbrush, 1 inch. Those 3 are going to be used on our base coat. But before we get into that, let's talk about the paint. I went ahead and splurged, and I bought myself the Liquitex Basics acrylic set of 48 different colors. Now, this is a heavy viscosity paint. It's got a heavy body to it, so when you mix it with Liquitex pouring medium, it becomes the perfect consistency for a nice plumpy dot. Now, if you don't have this paint, any heavy body paint will work. I've tried a whole bunch, and as long as you have the Liquitex pouring medium, you'll be fine. And if you're a beginner and you don't even want to mess around with a thick mixing paint, go ahead and use your fluid acrylics. Your dots will be flat, but the painting will still look beautiful. For this painting, I thought it would be fun for us to create a gradient background. Now, the first step is just lining up the stencil with that 12-inch canvas, and as you can see, it's really easy. You can just line it up with that outside circle and then find center super quickly. Now what we're going to do is just go make marks with our watercolor pencil at the end of each of these petals and just at different areas in the design where we want our colors to blend. Well, it doesn't really matter where you decide to place your outlines. It kind of makes sense to have it go along with the design in some way. So the colors will shift at a certain point in the design. What you want to do is grab your compass with the watercolor pencil inside your compass, and then just draw a concentric circle, placing the point of your watercolor pencil at each of these dots that you just drew. And what this does is it's going to give you circles extending out from the center. And these circles are going to basically dictate where your color changes are going to be. And it'll all make sense coming up next. You'll see what I mean. So now we're starting on our background gradient. So that first center circle, we're going to fill it with raw sienna. And you can see how just applying the paint in lines, concentric circles going out from the center, it's so easy having that lazy Susan just to move your canvas in a circular motion to apply the paint. It just helps out a great deal. And you can even add two colors if you have a wide foam brush like this. And that really helps also. Now, if this looks like something that is a little too involved for you, it's totally fine to do a solid color base coat using chalk paint. That's what I usually do, but for this project, I just wanted to do something a little extra fancy and show you guys an option that you have, and also just show off this neat Lazy Susan foam brush deal. I think that's kind of a cool thing to see. One thing to note, when you're using your foam brush, you don't want to change how the brush is placed on the canvas. So you don't want to flip it over to the other side and use the other direction, because your foam brush is loaded with paint. One color paint on one side and another color paint on the other, and it would just kind of ruin the whole thing. So that's something to keep in mind. But this was a lot of fun to create this gradient background, and I will be doing that again. Now the foam brush it had a texture to it, which is why you see all those white lines showing through on the canvas. So I took my brush and just smoothed out the paint. And that just gave the gradient transitions a little bit more of a smooth and even texture. And then for the edges, I just used burnt umber and applied that all the way around. And that finished off the edges of the canvas. So then at the end, once that's dry, you can come in and maybe add some more color and just kind of put a little finesse into it. Just make it extra smooth and colorful. Now once your base coat is dry, let's just take that flower stencil and trace all the lines, transferring that design down onto your canvas. And there we have it. This is going to be the bones of the painting. And now let's go ahead and get our paint into our palettes. Now, as you can see, these have a buttery consistency and they have a medium viscosity. So what we want to do to adjust the viscosity, make it a little bit more of a have a higher flow rate, we're going to add that Liquitex pouring medium. I add about a 1-to-1 ratio by volume, so really just as much as you need in order for it to get to this consistency. See how you pull the paint up and it just kind of sinks right back into itself. Now if you get a peak like that, you know that you need to add more pouring medium. And then you mix it down, pull it back up, and as long as that spiky peak comes and folds right back into itself, you know that you are good. We're going to use gold with tool number 9, and you can see on the screen there's going to be a reference to the tool number as well as the paint color. So that will help you in your journey through this painting. So this is the amount of paint for tool number 13, and we're just going to place that dot in the outside edge of the petal, and then using the number 1 tool, drag that paint from the center all the way to the tip of the petal. And if you want, you can keep adding paint to the desired height. I think I added 2 tools worth of paint just to get it nice and high. Take your number 1 tool and drag it right up into the edge of that petal. And then we'll do that all the way around for each of those 6 flower petals. And now using your yellow stylus tool, we're going to place dots along the lines that intersect those 2 petals. Just starting with your first and largest dot right in between the 2 pink petals, and then following with progressively smaller dots towards the center. Now we're going to place some teardrop shapes. Using the gold, just place a dot right in the center of each of those spaces and then draw it towards the center so that it points directly towards that center gold dot. Now we're going to use tool number 8 and extend that line going out with a big quinacridone magenta dot in between each of those petals. One thing you'll notice about really all quinacridone magentas is that they are semi-transparent or transparent. So the color that you see here is going to dry really dark because it's on a dark background. Now I noticed that I had some peaks forming on these dots because I didn't add enough pouring medium, so I just took my stylus tool and just kind of massaged those the peaks right out. Now we're going to switch the color and use a larger tool with tool number 9. This is primary red, and this just fits right in that space in between the petals and extending the line outwards from the center. Now we're going to make some swishes using a small white stylus. We're just going to go along the outer edge of those petals with quinacridone magenta and just add a dark swoosh along each of those petals. And basically what you do if you've never made one of these, basically you load up your tool, place a dot, and then drag it out in the direction that you want to go. The more paint that you have on your tool, the longer you can extend the paint out. And now we're going to do the same thing, only with primary red. and just follow the arc of the previous design elements that we made and just drag them towards the point of each of those petal tips. Now I noticed that one was not placed correctly, so this is a really good opportunity to show off what a silicone tool can do. That was an angled silicone tool and it just scraped up the mess and let me fix it and move on. It's a lot cleaner than a cotton swab, and those are indispensable. And now we're finally coming in with gold. Now you can see that my center dot is larger than the first dot that I place. And that's only because I hover with the first dot, barely touch the surface, and then that center dot, I push the tool into the canvas to get the dot a little bit larger. Now, if you've watched my videos before, this is not going to come as a shock to you, but I'm a real jerk about my gold paint. And unfortunately, this Liquitex Basics Gold is subpar, but so is a lot of other paints out there. I spend my money on Golden brand paint, and it's totally worth it. Now we're going to work in this arc-like petal shape, and we're going to create a fan-like design element coming out. So the first center space is going to be a big wide teardrop in this bright red. And now the second layer of the fan is going to be these magenta swooshes, just using the number 4 tool by itself. You can place a dot and then drag that dot out. This is just another option for you if you just want to use one tool. Now I messed up there. I got a little paint on that dot, but again, my silicone tools, they just come in and fix it for me. And now for the final layer of the fan, we're going to use this deep violet using a very small stylus tool and just mimic the arc all the way in towards the center, and we'll finish out that section. Well, this concludes part 1 of this 3-part series. If you liked this video, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and click that bell icon and it will notify you every time a new video is posted. The next video next week is going to be part 2 of this series, and we're going to finish that middle section. We're going to get right about there. It's going to be so much fun. Thank you so much for exploring this paintbroidery series with me. In the end, you'll have something beautiful to put on your wall. And as always, you can visit me over at thedottingcenter.com for all of your dot art needs. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.